Hello, welcome to KegThat's YouTube channel. I've spent the last month making nothing but cider, day after day, crushing and pressing apples, picking more, crushing and pressing apples over and over again. It's been very fun, but it does mean that I'm out of beer. Almost. Never be fully out of beer. But I need to start replenishing my stocks, and so I need to make beer quite quickly. So I've got half a keg of Pilsner, I've got 1 keg of cider from last season, and today I'm making a beer which will hopefully be ready in less than a week, and I can either get it on keg or put it in bottles because I've actually got another beer in the fermentation chamber. I'm also going to try and hit quite a few birds with one stone. And by that, what I mean is I need to make a beer quickly, so I'm going to be using Ebbergarden, which is a kveik yeast, and it ferments in about 5 days at 35 degrees, maybe a bit less. I also want to do an open fermentation, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Plus, as well as picking apples, I've also been picking my hops, and it's been such a good year for both hops and apples, so I've got tons in my freezer, and I want to use up some from last year and previous years, which I still have in my freezer, so I'm going to be throwing those in the brew today. So an open fermentation, what is it, and why is it worth doing? So I know that so many homebrew teachers and so many resources online say, never open up your fermenter to have a look in it. That's just a big no, because you're going to get it infected. It's going to ruin the batch. And yes, generally you shouldn't be opening up your fermenter, but you can do an open fermentation in a very controlled environment. As you can see, this is my fermentation chamber. It's a closed fridge. I've made sure it's very clean inside, given it a nice wipe down so it's very clean so I can have the lid off. It does mean that I'm not really going to open this up. But open fermentations as well have been used for a very, very long time in brewing. When you think about how beer was made before the Industrial Revolution, it pretty much all was open fermentations. So when you think about the yeast that we use today, it is kind of derived from those yeasts. To put it crudely, that yeast had an environment that was actually pressureless. When you put a lid on a fermenter and even put the airlock in, that creates some back pressure. The water, the liquid in the bubbler will create some back pressure. What that does is that it starts to suppress ester and phenol development. So that's, of course, preferable in things like lagers and IPAs and clean beers, which is why also pressure fermentation has become a thing recently. Pressure ferment an IPA and it's going to be really nice and clean. But with open fermentation, which is I guess kind of the opposite, we want those phenols, we want those esters, and there's still quite a few breweries that make wheat beers and saisons, and even some English breweries with English-style yeast, which does create English-style yeast does create some nice esters. Another yeast which is very flavorful and evolved in a pressureless and open environment is kveik. And I'm going to be using Ebbergarden, which, as some of you may know, is one of my favorites because it's a sour yeast. However, I've never actually brewed it in a non-sour beer. So that's another thing I'm doing today, which is using it to ferment a beer with hops in, my homegrown hops, and those hops will stop the lactobacillus growing. So I want to see if I can get some of those really nice tropical flavors that I got from it when using it as a sour beer, see if I can still get those flavors even when I'm suppressing the lactobacillus. The malt bill for this is 3.75 kilos of Maris Otter, 200 grams of wheat, and 500 grams of Cara Gold. It's a bit of a user-upper recipe as well. The hops that I'm using are homegrown Cascade, so about 50 grams of that, and 50 grams of homegrown Rambling Cross as well. I'll put the recipe in the description. Now, anyway, let's get brewing. Mash water is at temperature, so let's stow in. Right, I've got the mash on, and I found this, which is a bottle of the summer beer, the summer ale that I made in the summer. It's still tasting pretty good. I bottled it from the keg. But anyway, I've mentioned before that I grow some hops, and I'm using them today. I'm using Fuggles for bittering. I have a lot of it, and I know that Fuggles isn't the best bittering hop because it's low alpha acid, so you have to use a lot of it, but I have a lot of it. And you might be thinking, how am I growing Cascade in Britain? Well, it's not going to taste, and it doesn't taste like Cascade you would get at a homebrew shop, which has been grown in America. Terroir affects hops quite a lot, similar to grapes for wine. And so one of the interesting things about home growing hops is by growing a hop in a different region, you get different flavors from it. And it will be very unique to you and your beer. And that's a really interesting thing to do, actually. A really interesting way to get more flavors. If you can, I would really recommend growing hops. They're not that difficult. They're very hardy plants. They need a couple of years to develop, but once they reach maturity, after 2 to 3 years, they can almost look after themselves. You've probably seen loads of hops growing by railway tracks, which just kind of goes to show that through the brambles and through the bindweed or that grows by the train tracks, hops can thrive. So it's a pretty easy plant to grow, and you can make some really unique beers, and it's really satisfying making a beer with your own hop. Just getting the boil underway, the water's heating up, and I've got my hops ready, and I'm going to measure out some Fuggles. So, of course, I don't actually know the alpha acid. I'm just assuming it's the average alpha acid for Fuggles. So I'm going to put in about 60 grams for bittering. So I'm just waiting for the water to heat up for the boil. And something to consider with open fermentations is that it opens the beer up to the air, and it opens it up to oxygen. What that means is during fermentation, whilst the yeast is active, the yeast can utilize that oxygen, and it helps it make more esters. So as well as there being no pressure on the beer, the increased oxygen to the beer will mean it creates more esters, which is of course preferable. However, it gets to the point in fermentation where you want to close the lid. You want to make sure that there isn't any oxygen and the beer is protected. So I'll show you at what point, basically after the krausen has died down, you'll want to fix a lid to the beer. But it's kind of complicated because the lid needs an airlock, because even though the krausen has died down, the beer will still be producing some carbon dioxide, just not necessarily enough, and you don't want to have any accidents of lids flying off and spraying beer everywhere and that sort of thing, or carbonating the beer unnecessarily. We've got to the boil, so I'm going to put in the first lot of hops, which is the Fuggles. There we go. There was a small bit left over. I can't really be bothered to vacuum pack it and put it back in the freezer, so I'll just chuck it into the end of the boil with the rest of the hops. It's only probably about 15 grams or so. The alarm's gone. It's the end of the boil. I've already put in the immersion chiller and some yeast nutrient in the form of bread yeast. And yeah, that's for the kveik. I've just put in the final hop addition, and I'm just going to get it cooling now. Okay, so I'm going to pitch the yeast now. So I've got all the wort in the fermenter, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pitch the yeast, which I've got on a stir plate, and then once I've pitched the yeast, I'm going to put the lid on, just for carrying it over to the fermentation chamber, so I'm not like sloshing it everywhere. And then when I get to the fermentation chamber, I'm going to take the lid off, and I'm going to leave it half off. And then I'm going to check on it in a couple of days and see how it's going. Once the krausen starts to die down, I'm then going to clip the lid back on. But I'll take you through all that when it happens. Okay, can't really leave it half off, but it's off. It feels really unnatural doing this, but let's see how it turns out. Okay, it's day 2 of fermentation, and I had a quick look, and the krausen has died down, so I'm gonna go and clip the lid back on. Putting my nose in there, it smells very, very tropical. Okay, it's a few days later, and fermentation has finished. I drew off a sample and cooled it down. It's very, very hazy. I thought it might still be yeast and flocculation, but I realised I forgot to put protofloc in again, so it's just going to be a hazy beer. Out the barrel, and of course this is going to change over time. I'm definitely getting that sort of pineapple and mango tropical flavours from the yeast, and some woodiness, which would be from the my homegrown hops. So those yeast esters are coming through probably more than the hops are in this sample, and it's really nice. It tastes like a nice session pale ale. Yeah, it tastes like a complex pale ale. I'm definitely getting tropical fruits. I'm also getting some like woodiness and maybe some like fruitiness from the cascade that I've grown, and maybe a bit of tea flavour. Anyway, it's really nice and complex, and I've got a free keg that I'm going to put it in, and I'll be back to try it in a few days. It's spent about a week or so in the keg now, and it's time to try. Wow, that is hazy. Almost muddy. So it also doesn't have a great deal of head on it. It's very pale in colour, but the muddiness makes it look a bit darker perhaps. Yeah, I forgot to put protofloc in, which would make it not very clear, and also Ebbergarden is a low flocculator, I guess. The aroma, very woody. I'm getting some fruits through as well, like juicy fruits, kind of juicy stone fruits like mango. So getting some pineapple. So the malts come through quite a bit on this. It's also quite woody, and there is also quite a bit of those fruits coming through, some overripe mango and overripe pineapple, and those esters from the yeast. The mouthfeel is probably a bit thinner than it looks. Like it's perhaps a bit on the thicker side, but it's still very drinkable. Getting a bit of a resinous finish as well, so pine and that sort of thing. The bitterness is kind of balanced. This is a really interesting beer. It's really nice. It's very clean as well. So even though I had the lid off during the ferment, it's like no bugs have got in. It's very clean. There's no discernible off flavors here. It's very complex as well. There's so much going on. So yeah, I'm getting those fruity flavors, getting woodiness, getting like resinous flavor probably from the cascade. Yeah, I think the woodiness is probably coming from the other hops that I've added. And yeah, that fruitiness is really, really nice as well. So if I added protofloc or Irish moss or something to this to make it clear, I would enter this into a BJCP sanctioned competition as a pale ale. It's really nice, it's really clean, and it's almost got this crispness to it that you expect from a pale ale. I think this open fermentation was a success. I think I'm getting quite a lot of the yeast flavours through, which is what I wanted with that. Using my own hops was really nice as well. I've got an article that I'll link to below with more information about open ferments. But I'm really pleased with this, and I'm really glad that I've tried this. I think for flavourful yeast, when I want those yeast esters and phenolics, I'm going to do this from now on. And I think with a lot of, like as you probably can see from our videos, we do a lot of kveik brewing, and I think for a lot of those beers, I'm going to do open ferments. I love Ebbergarden. as a sour beer, and I think I'm just going to try them all with the lid off and get even more flavour from them. I made a sour beer recently and there's a video about it, and I'm going to brew it again because it's such a nice beer, and I'm going to do it with the lid off. As I drink more of this, the fruit flavours come through more and it becomes a bit more citrusy. I'm getting quite a bit of lemon actually, and I can see it leaves quite a nice lacing on the glass. If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a like, please subscribe if you haven't already, and comment below to let us know how you got on with your open ferment, or if you'd like any more advice on this. Thank you.